All right, so here we go. This is our affordable health care. So, a report on healthcare in the U.S. said that 22% of Americans have experienced times when they haven't been able to afford medical care. A news organization randomly sampled 801 Black Americans, of whom 31% reported that there had been times in the last year when they had not been able to afford medical care. Does this indicate that the problem is more severe among Black Americans? So it uses the phrase do test an appropriate hypothesis and state your conclusion. Now notice, folks, it asks you to state your conclusion, and then it tells you all the stuff you're supposed to do prior to, but this is about the only time that this will occur. So here we go. From our problem, 22% of Americans. So that is our population. So P is 0.22. Well, if P is 0.22, subtract that from 1, Q is 0.78. Once again, I remind you, this plus this has to equal 1. It's did a random sample of 801 Black Americans. So there's our first condition that is met, of whom 31%, P hat, P hat, P hat, 31% reported there had been times in the last year. So my P hat is 0.31. If P hat is 0.31, subtract that from 1 and I get 0.69. That's my Q hat. If we have to do an interval, that's important, but for this problem, it's really not that important. So N is 801. And people say, well, where does the 249 come from? Well, to find X, you do the inverse of what we would normally do. Normally we have to find P hat and we divide these two. Well, you don't have to divide today. We multiply 0.31 times 801, you get 248.3 something. But I rounded that to 249. You can do it however you want to. Okay. So this is could not afford Medcare. This is 800 Black Americans. Okay, so our null hypothesis is, does this indicate that this problem is more severe among Black Americans? So our null hypothesis is that P equals 0.22, okay, whatever that value is. And then we say, could it be, our alternative hypothesis is P greater than 0.22 with an alpha of 0.05. I'll remind you once again, alpha stays at 0.05 unless it is stated otherwise. So we've talked random. Our N is 801. Is that less than 10% of all Black Americans? Yes. So we do NP. So 801 times 0.22 is 176.22, which is greater than 10. My NQ, my failures, is 801 times 0.78, which is 624.78, which is also greater than 10. So our conditions are met. We can use the normal model, and we're going to do a one proportion z-test. One proportion z-test. So to do our z-test, we come down here to our calculations. We're first going to find our standard deviation. It's the square root of PQ over N. So 0.22, 0.78 divided by 801 is 0.0148. And so I'll just rounded that up to 0.015. You could have left it as 0.0148. Choice is yours. And then we do a z-score of 0.31 minus 0.22 divided by that number. Now, this value right here that I have, my z-score, is from the calculator. This number really is just 6. But so you're wondering where I get my number from. That's from the calculator that I'm about to do. So then I look at this and say, okay, the probability that P, my alternative hypothesis, probability that P is greater than 0.22 is the same thing as saying the probability that Z equals my Z value I found. Z equals 6.2. And then I run my test. So stat test 5. I put in my null hypothesis, 0.22. My 249 for X, my 801 is my sample size. It's greater than, this is my alternative hypothesis, was greater than. And then I calculate. Okay, so for our proportion that's greater than 0.22, the probability of that occurring gives me a z-score of 6.2, 007 dot, 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 dot. That's the reason why mine is 6.2 here. The p-value is 2.69, and you'll think, oh, wow, that's much bigger than 0.05. No, it's not. If this number, if p is greater than 1, if p is greater than 1, p can't be greater than 1. If p looks to be greater than 1, look to the right, be conservative like I am for a moment. See that e to the negative 10th? That means I got to put 9 zeros in front of that too. So that's the reason why it looks like this, 0.00000 ... 2. There again is my p hat. Sure enough, is 31, and that is sample size for 801 Black Americans. So scooting that over here with the low p-value, negative exponent there, compared to alpha, which was 0.05, we reject the null hypothesis. There is very strong evidence that the problem is more severe among Black Americans of not being able at some point in time to afford medical care. All right, and that's all of that. Hope you have a good day.